Welcome back, everybody. This Week in America on the Blue Funk Broadcasting Radio Network. Great to have you with us on the program. Website, thisweekinamerica.us. Information on the guest on today's program there as well. The guest on today's program, as mentioned, is Jane Bernard, author of the book, Am I Really Hungry? 6 Sense Diet, Intuitive Eating. Jane, welcome to This Week in America. Great to have you with us on the program.
Thanks, Rick. I'm so excited to be here.
This is such a great idea, and I want to let's start off by talking about intuition. And this is something, and you and I have talked before about this, something that as I get older, I really believe more and more in following intuition. You call it a sixth sense. It's almost like a personal GPS system. Explain what intuition is and if we all have it.
Great. Intuition is our body-mind connection that is actually, yes, our sixth sense. It's physical, just like seeing, hearing, tasting, touching, and smelling are physical. We are seeing each other right now, but we take our eyes for granted. In fact, we take our intuition for granted, and our eyes show us what's in front of us. Our intuition, as our sixth sense, shows us our best quality of life, our best options. That's why sometimes we have intuition as common sense. Sometimes it's that gut feeling. And it connects what we sense with what we know and what we feel to give us our clearest perspective.
I mentioned in the beginning that you're an intuition expert and educator. And in the beginning, I said, as I get older, I believe more and more in intuition. Do you find that to be true? And I guess maybe we have so many experiences that we put in that little pool as we get older that we rely more on intuition or that gut feeling.
That is, in fact, when you were a kid, you relied on your intuition all the time because it's natural to be intuitive. We are the only animals in the world who don't trust our intuition, and we're the only ones who diet, by the way. Intuition is your survival instinct. So if you don't trust that, where are you? It's cultural not to trust your intuition. When you're a kid, you get like an intuitive nudge and you say to your mom, hey, I don't really feel like this is right. And she says, this is what we're doing. Or you have another experience where you say, I don't think we should go there. And you're said, you're going there. Don't even argue. So we're sort of brainwashed. And the reason why you're coming back to it now, Rick, is because life experience has taught you that your intuition will never lead you astray. It will only give you positive direction, because that's a fact. Our intuition will never tell us to do anything harmful or self-defeating in any way. So when we trust our sixth sense, the way we trust our eyes and our ears and our nose and our mouth and our sense of touch, when we trust that inner voice, that sixth sense, then we trust ourselves in a whole way that enables us to make decisions that are rewarding.
I want to our eating habits, and Jane Bernard is our guest on This Week in America. Her book is Am I Really Hungry? 6 Sense Diet, Intuitive Eating. Her website is amireallyhungry.com. You can go to our website, thisweekinamerica.com.us, and then log on to it there as well. In your book, you talk about we are the only species that really doesn't follow intuitive eating. And when you think about it, that's exactly true. We're the only ones that plan, make a big thing out of it, check the clock at 6 o'clock, we must be hungry, we've got to eat. How do we take that intuition then and apply that to a diet?
Well, first of all, we have to think about what a diet is. Diets became popular in 1960 with Weight Watchers, and they were based on restrictions, and they were based on rituals and routines that made sense 50 or 60 years ago. But in fact, they don't make sense now. Now, to apply it to a healthy body, the kind of quote-unquote diet isn't restrictive. It's tuning into yourself and your reality and your needs, because everything is different. So the first thing to do to be an intuitive eater is to start using your senses when you eat. And the real sense that's going to keep you really in tune with your body in the very beginning, believe it or not, is taste. If you make it your mission to taste everything you eat, two things will happen. One is you'll eat slower, because when you taste your food, you slow down to either enjoy it which is, of course, intuitive to enjoy eating, or to spit it out because you'll say, ew, it's full of
Right.
grease or sugar, or I don't like it. Because in fact, your body's giving you messages 24/7. So I would say taste your food is the first thing to do to be an intuitive eater.
You know, it's interesting in the book, Am I Really Hungry? In the beginning, you show a hand and the fingers being the senses. Explain that because when there's a graphic, it makes the whole concept a lot easier to understand.
Okay, I'm going to use my hand in front of my face. Think of your hand and then think of your five fingers as your five senses: seeing, hearing, tasting, touching, and smelling. Think of your palm as your intuition. Your intuition literally connects what you hear with what you see, taste, touch, and smell. And an example of this is you hear something, you turn your head, you look, boom, you run. Instantly, you know something's going on. That's intuitive. Intuition is not intellectual, it's physical. And also, your intuition connects what you sense with what you feel in your heart and what you know in your mind and how your body's feeling. So your intuition is really what keeps you sharp. So if you hurt your palm, for example, you can't pick up your glasses because your fingers aren't going to work well together. The same thing is true too. If you're not using your intuition, you can walk into a wall. You can eat a plate of food that's bigger than your head. If you're not using your intuition, you're not going to be clear about what you sense. And if you're not clear about what you sense, you make decisions that cause frustration, loneliness, and boredom, and that make you fat.
Jane Bernard is our guest on This Week in America. She's the author of the book, Am I Really Hungry? 6 Sense Diet Intuitive Eating. Her website is amireallyhungry.com. Thisweekinamerica.us is our website. You can log on and get information there as well. If you had to break it down, and you say this several times in the book, eat when hungry, stop when not. If there's anything you take away from the program today or reading the book, I'm thinking that's probably the most important. You eat when you're hungry and stop when you're not. And when you think about it, many of us really don't do that.
Well, Rick, that's logical that many of us wouldn't do that because diets from the 20th century never suggest that you even know you're hungry. Instead, you're sort of pegged into a program. You must eat this for breakfast. You have to have this many calories for lunch. You must eat this for dinner. And that disconnects us from the neck down from what we're feeling. That's why people yo-yo. Like when you're on a diet, of course it works because you're like in a jail cell and you have only certain amounts. But when you lose the weight and you come back out, you don't know how to deal with life because you're not in tune with yourself. Intuitive eating is being in sync with yourself. It feels great. So what I did in Am I Really Hungry is I interviewed dieters and I interviewed intuitive eaters to know what are the tricks that we need to know to be able to stay slim without dieting, and what are the problems caused by dieting from years of dieting that make us gain weight and be discombobulated and unsure of when we're hungry and when we're not. One of the tools that people use when they are intuitive eaters is curiosity, as basic as that is. That's why the book is called Am I Really Hungry? Because intuitive eaters, no matter when they sit down to eat, they say to themselves, am I really hungry? And then they try to see if they feel hungry in their stomach or not. Because sometimes intuitive eaters sit down to eat and they say, am I really hungry? And they check in with their body and they feel exhausted. And they say, you know what? I'm really tired. That's the message from my body. And they just don't eat and they take a nap. But curiosity helps you, especially if you're used to dieting, to start tuning into your body with your senses, but also to know that you have alternatives. And when you don't know you have alternatives, you don't know whether you're full or hungry or not. And there's 10 intuitive tools, but curiosity is a really basic one. It's part of your survival instinct. You have to be curious if something's safe. You have to be curious if it's good, and you have to be curious about how you feel, because eating is actually very personal. It's about you. So the first thing to do, if you don't know when you're hungry and don't know when you're not, is check in with your senses, notice what you notice, and be curious about how you feel, because that's the beginning of knowing if you're hungry.
I might say Jane is doing the program from New York City. That's why we get the sirens in the background. You notice she didn't even bat an eye as we were talking, because that happens all the time in the
All
background in
the
New York.
time. I call it the New York crickets.
In the book, Am I Hungry? You quote a study from the BBC that says about 95% of people on diet lose weight, they gain it back, and they'll go back on a diet again. For the diet industry, that's good news, because once you become hooked on getting one of their products or following one of their diets, chances are you're going to be caught up in that for a long period of time. And the 10 tools that Jane mentioned are available in the book, Am I Really Hungry? The website is amireallyhungry.com. The book's available across the country. Information on getting the book there as well. Some things we do and we think, okay, we're going to prevent us now from overeating. I am going to be pre-planning my meal. I am going to work on all the details for my meal. And you're saying that's not eating instinctively, intuitively, when you do it that way.
No, it's not. As a matter of fact, that is the opposite of intuition. Intuition is to be in the moment. Now, once again, when diets were created, life was predictable. But my experience is that nothing is predictable in the 21st century. So you can't really know right now what you're going to be hungry for dinner tonight, because you don't know what's going to happen in an hour. And if you pre-plan your meal, you lock yourself into something that may have nothing to do with your metabolism or your needs or your stress. Because when you eat intuitively and you ask yourself, am I really hungry? You check in with your emotions and your social pressure and your physical reality to know if you're really hungry and what you're really hungry for. Also, there was this woman who I was working with who had been a yo-yo dieter for over 20 years, and it was very hard for her to stop pre-planning. So she told me she was having lunch with her friend at a restaurant on Monday. She talked to me on a Friday, and that she had already knew what she was going to have. I said, oh, what are you going to have? She said, I'm having a turkey sandwich. I said, okay. She said, because everything else is bad on the menu. Well, intuitive eaters don't use words like bad, because there's nothing bad or good. It's like what you're hungry for or not. So I talked to her after her lunch. I said, how was that lunch? She said, oh, I came home and I had a relapse. I said, what happened? She said, well, I ate 2 boxes of cookies when I came. I said,
wow.
What happened? She said, I don't know. I said, well, tell me something. How was the turkey sandwich? And there was dead silence on the phone. She said, I don't remember eating it. I said, I'm so sorry to hear that, because if you hadn't planned it, it wouldn't have already been stale in your mind. If you hadn't planned it, you wouldn't have felt it was a punishment to have a turkey sandwich. If you hadn't planned it and you had gone to lunch with your friend and you had thought, hey, I still want to lose another 10 pounds. And this menu, when I look at it, a turkey sandwich seems like the smartest thing I can have. You would have probably ordered it and you would have eaten intuitively, which would have meant you would have tasted it and chewed it and eaten it slowly and let yourself enjoy it. Then you would have felt satisfied. But I think you binged when you came home because you were frustrated, you were angry, and you were unhappy. And I don't blame you, so don't do that again.
Well, and it's fascinating. As you're telling that story, we all can relate to that, because that's how most of us make decisions. We've got, unfortunately, just about a minute left in the program.
Okay.
You said something that's so interesting. In fact, I sort of added to that. The name of the book is Am I Really Hungry? And I added to that, it must be I'm 6 o'clock. And you say, don't be a victim by the clock. Don't be held captive by the clock.
Right. I say don't be kept in bondage by time. Time is really not relevant. It's how you feel. Your body's on its own clock. If it's 6 o'clock and you're not hungry, don't eat. If it's 10 o'clock p.m. and you haven't eaten anything and you're hungry, but you're going to bed in a half an hour, I suggest you don't eat. Or because actually, in fact, you're not going to die of starvation if you skip dinner one night. Nothing should tell you to be hungry but your body, because eating is physical. It's to give you energy and quality of life. So don't listen to rules that don't come from you. Don't buy into dogma that doesn't feel right. Use curiosity. Curiosity is a feeling. It's an intuitive cue. It's not something you think. You don't think you're curious. You feel curious about something. So trust your curiosity, trust your body. Get, am I really hungry, to know what the other tools are so you can use them to defeat frustration and social stress and confusion that is caused by habits formed from dieting.
Also in the book, you talk about, and we're out of time, but it's another reason the book is so important. You talk about the 4 different types of hunger. And we're not always hungry because physically we need food. Emotional hunger, you refer to as self-abuse, and we'll have Jane back in the program and you can read about it in the book. The book is called Am I Really Hungry? 6 Sense Diet, Intuitive Eating. More on the book at Jane's website. It's Jane Bernard. Her website is amireallyhungry.com. Information on the book there. You can order it anywhere across the country. Information on it on our website, thisweekinamerica.us. Jane, an excellent book. It's been great to have you on This Week in America.
Thanks, Rick. It's been a pleasure talking to you.